We are going to get to our special guest right now. Pleased to introduce you to former Fire Chief Scott Bullard. And Scott, thank you for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time, sir. I understand you're out of town getting ready to watch a football game.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning. Thank you for having me on. I'm actually up here in Knoxville, Tennessee to see my Volunteers play tomorrow.
Oh, nice, man. Okay. Hey, I want to dive right into it with you here, Scott, because I got to tell you, we talked about this earlier in the week, and I was just perplexed. Like, none of this seemed to make any sense. So maybe you can help us make this make sense. Maybe it still doesn't make sense to you. I don't know. Yeah. But I want to start with your resignation letter, because basically the first news we got was that you had resigned, and you were only just a handful of months into your career as the fire rescue chief. So I want to start with this resignation letter. I'm going to read this for the audience who may not have seen it, and then we're going to get right into it. So it says, you wrote to Miss Joy Andrews. It says, Miss Andrews, it is to my dissatisfaction that I submit my resignation as fire chief of St. Johns County Fire Rescue. My last day of employment was October 3rd, 2023. Due to unforeseen circumstances beyond my control, my resignation was recommended by county administration. I'm forced to resign from this position, having done nothing to cause detriment to the fire department or the county, and having done nothing that could be perceived as immoral, unethical, or illegal. My separation is not a result of any type of disciplinary act. I'm grateful for the time I spent with SJCFR. The experience and opportunities that have resulted from my career have been invaluable to me. Upon my resignation, the county has agreed to provide me with 90 days of administrative leave and pay, along with the payout of my accrued leave balance according to the county administration code. I'm currently awaiting supporting documentation for that fact. Talk to me about your career with the fire department. As I understand it, 21 years, model firefighter, 0 disciplinary actions, well-liked. Talk to me first, I guess, about your time with the fire department and how we got to where we are now.
Right, and it's actually 22 years.
22. I apologize.
Yeah, and don't short me out of one more year. In my opinion.
That retirement's coming up, man.
FRS counts.
Yeah, it does. Well, last Monday morning was the first I had heard about any type of dissatisfaction with me from county administration. So I went in for my normal Monday briefing like I do every other week. And instead of meeting in Brad Bradley's office like normal, I was directed to the conference room, and Joy and Brad walked in and told me that they were going a different direction with the fire chief position.
And did they give you a reason at that time? Was there a reason at this meeting that they gave you for this? Because it just seems odd to me that there wasn't even like, hey, let's talk about what you did wrong here, what they were dissatisfied with. It was just like, well, they perceived one mistake and you were gone?
Well, I asked exactly that. I said, what did I do or what did I not do? And Joy told me that, you did nothing wrong. You're a very strong leader. You have good integrity, and you have open and honest communication. Well, those are good things, right?
Yeah, and, I would think so.
And she said, yes, but the timing is not right for me to be the fire chief right now.
And Scott, and there's always, and I was in a very similar situation. I walked in, I knew I was getting gone. So, I knew what I did to get gone. But there's so many rumors that go out when you're in a high profile position like this. And I know you've heard quite a few of them. One of the things that I got, from some people is you had some pushback. And I'm going back to Bobby Hall days and stuff like that. And he had some trouble also with some of the union decisions that they did, and you didn't line up with exactly the way they wanted to line up. Was there any truth to that created some of that pushback, that created it more of a political situation instead of a performance thing?
I believe the union, the executive board of the union, was a big player in this. There have been a few disagreements, I would say. I mean, it's, we had contract negotiations. So anytime that happens, there's going to be, a little bit of friction there, but
people aren't always going to get their way. Yeah.
Sure. That's natural to negotiate.
Right.
I mean, that's what a negotiation is, right? A little bit of a disagreement. We come to an understanding.
Yeah.
Correct. And just, typically involved with negotiations, you have compromise. And in this case, there wasn't a willingness to compromise from the other side. So, without getting too deep into it, I'll leave that part right there. But
Sure.
But yeah, there was no specific reason given for me to to not have this position anymore. And I think a big part of that ties back to who appointed me, and that was Hunter Conrad, and it was not Joy Andrew who appointed me.
Very interesting. So let's go back to when you were first appointed. Tell me what the process was like when you first took over. Was there any mentorship? Was there any sort of training for this position? Did anybody kind of show you the ropes on how this position is normally undertaken? How this job is normally done?
Well, aside from the training that I sought out on my own prior to going through the interview process, I've been training and seeking education on this my entire career. But no, once I took over, it was essentially the keys are on the desk, and that was that was the pass down. We had to figure it out as we were going. I was able to select my support staff, my administrative staff surrounding me, which was a huge benefit to me because I had some very capable people in those positions. I did a reorganization, got the right people in the right places, and we were making really good progress. Or at least I thought so.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the issues that were kind of used that I've heard in the media that the county kind of said this doesn't work for us. The uniforms. There's been a lot made about the uniforms. Yes. Talk to me about the beef with the uniforms. I don't understand what's going on because it sounds like your department wanted to make a switch. It sounded like there were some issues with the current uniforms that a lot of people were on board with making a change. Talk to me about the uniform situation, please.
Right. So the current uniforms we're wearing are made out of a material called Nomex. It's a flame-resistant material. And any material that's flame-resistant is going to have PFAS chemicals in it. And those are the forever chemicals, the ones that actually leach out into your skin and can cause cancer. Yeah. Firefighters have a high enough risk of cancer as it is, without adding to that unnecessarily. So it was a mutual agreement to shift away from those type of uniforms. As part of that process, we ordered, we have what we call a labor management committee. It's comprised of members of the union and members of the fire rescue administration. That group is who makes decisions like these or makes recommendations for stuff like this. So we had I'd say 6 or 7 different styles and types of uniforms that were out for 2 to 3 months that were being wear tested by members of our department. And when June of last year came around, or this year, I'm sorry, we had a new hire class starting, and both sides agreed, administration and the union agreed that we didn't want to outfit these new hires. There was 24 personnel. We didn't want to outfit them in the Nomex uniforms. We wanted to get something, because we're trying to move away from that. So at that point, the current uniforms that are in question, that are a cotton polyester blend, they were receiving the most positive feedback from the people that were field wear testing them. So we agreed to purchase uniforms just specifically for this new hire class, and let them do further wear testing on the uniforms. And then, at some point we would move towards making a decision on what our final decision is going to be on the uniforms. So, in order to do that, these uniforms weren't compliant with the contract language. So we had to have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, drawn up and signed to allow this. We couldn't have even purchased these uniforms or distributed them without this agreement between the county and the union.
So everybody agreed on these. Everybody agreed on these, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the MOU, Dave Stevens, the union president, and Hunter Conrad are the two people that signed off on that. You know, so I'm getting blamed for this, but my signature's not on there.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize that side of it.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, the uniforms are agreed. It seems like this was a better move. It seems like everybody agreed about this until recently. Just another kind of perplexing part of this story. Let me move on, and we'll talk a little bit about other things have been said about Hurricane Idalia, and talk to me about. They're claiming inadequate staffing levels, things of that nature. Talk to me about the situation as you saw it with Hurricane Idalia, and kind of what they're claiming and what your response is.
Right. And I have not seen that entire report yet. I've heard, a couple of people brought up to me and mentioned some concern, some of the things that it says, but I have not seen that report. But yeah, due to, from what I've understood, the concerns they're addressing aren't valid because we use the same hurricane staffing plan, the hurricane response policy that we've had for years. I mean, hurricanes aren't uncommon here. We do this every year, and we have a system that's tried and tested. It works. Why would I come in and change anything? So we followed the same thing we've always done. We had everybody in the right position. We had 2 out of our 3 shifts were activated. So we had 2/3 of our department that were at work on standby where they needed to be with all the equipment and the apparatus that needed to be there. The thing with Idalia is we were on the outside of the cone of, impact. So there was literally not much to do. We were standing by. But what I will point out, do you have a copy of that report?
I don't know if I have it in front of me.
What I can say about it is the people who were interviewed per se for to give the feedback on this inquiry from Brad Bradley. If you look, you have Sean McGee, who is now the fire chief, Stephanie Whaley, who is now the assistant fire chief, Mike Kazort, who is now the operations chief, and then, of course, Dave Stevens, who's the union president. So you tell me if they had motivation behind any of their comments.
Yeah. That's an interesting side of this that I also did not realize.
Yeah, they're not really publicizing all of this stuff.
No, which is why I wanted to have you on this morning and really get this side of the story, because we've heard kind of what the county wants to have out there, and we talked about that information, we put out that information, but it just seemed like there were pieces to this story missing. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of fill in these blanks, but I got to tell you, it's still not making sense to me. No. I mean, it's still not adding up to me.
Yeah, me either.
Well, I can tell you, it's one of those situations, when you're too close to the head of the snake, that's when the injuries happen. Yeah. And it sounds like you got caught up into some other stuff, Scott, from a guy who's been a whole life in government. You might have been too close to the head of the snake, and and that's the reason I asked the question. It sounded like it was a political decision more than a performance decision.
Correct. I mean, and if you look, like I said, I got called in there. I left my meeting at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, having been told that, I wasn't going to be able to continue. I told Joy that, I said, because I was given the option, resign or be terminated. I said, look, I can't make a decision like that today, because that day, Monday, was the anniversary of one of our firefighters who took his own life last year. And so it was a dark day to begin with. And then, I had that dumped in my lap, and I said, I'm not in the mind space to make a decision today. It'll have to be tomorrow before I can make a decision. And she said, okay, that's fine. Tomorrow's fine. So I left, and then, a couple hours later, she sends an email out to the department internally that said, I resigned that morning, and here's the entire new command staff.
Whoa! But you hadn't resigned. Whoa. You hadn't resigned. They put this, as I understand, They put this out to the press. I mean, they really sent this out as if this was your official resignation.
You were under emotional duress.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
You took the time, you took the leadership to step away for a second to not make this decision irrationally. That is not right. Sorry.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not
Yeah.
right.
30 minutes after. Yeah, 30 minutes after the internal memo came out, the public media release came out, and it was at that point. I hadn't even told my wife yet when the first release came out. So it was.
Wow.
That's embarrassing. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's really embarrassing.
Yeah, so
that's dirty, man.
With your career, you said 22 years. Is it all with FRS?
Yes. Yeah, all the St. John's County.
I'm gonna give you a little professional advice, and you don't have to take it, or you can take it. Make sure they write that check to you in December. Okay, because I can tell you right now, because it's your retirement has everything to do with it. If it goes into January, that doesn't help your average for your last year.
Gotcha.
Let's talk a little bit about retirement, because you're only a handful of years away from what would be your official retirement, correct?
Correct. I could retire in 3 years, and obviously can't retire before then, and wasn't planning on retiring in 3 years, but I want to at least reach that mark, so that's an option.
Wow.
Yeah. So the reason I say that, Scott, is it's going to create your average, and for the audience out there, FRS, the way it works, it's the average of your best 5 years. So if he gets that extra 3 months in this, it'll create his best 5 year.
Oh,
so that helps his average. Now, Scott, obviously, hopefully you land somewhere else in an FRS, and FRS is a great retirement program. But that's the reason I say that, is because if it moves into next year, then that doesn't help his average for an annual salary.
Okay.
So that's the reason I was saying that. I'm just trying to have your back for a guy who went through it.
Right.
Well, I read that you indeed do want to revert back to battalion chief. We don't have to go into the minutia of why that was, but I believe you communicated with Joy Andrews. And one thing that I read, which was kind of surprising to me, was that she basically said, you basically said, I don't necessarily want to resign. And she kind of said, well, we'll find a reason for you to resign. We'll resign for you, and we'll find a reason to do that. That must have been a shocking statement to hear.
Well, it was, and that was Tuesday afternoon, but there's some events that happened before that as well. Initially, I asked on Monday morning, if I could revert back to battalion chief.
Okay.
Because I was still in my probationary period as the fire chief, and our contract allows for a reversion back, if you're still in your probationary period. She said no, because that would make people uncomfortable to be working alongside me. These are the same people that I've worked side by side with for 22 years and never had any problems.
This is heartbreaking.
I don't think that's it. Yeah. And so I was, upset clearly. I went home on Monday. I composed an email to her, and also sent it to all 5 commissioners Monday night, just kind of giving an overview of the situation and how I felt about it and what I thought I deserved the opportunity to revert back. Well, I got a phone call from Joy at 7:30 Tuesday morning. There was also, once this news started happening on Monday, there was many people who were upset by this in the department. They all planned on Tuesday was a commission meeting. There was a group of probably about 50 people that were going to go and speak in public comment in support of me. A lot of people that sent emails to the commissioners and to Joy, in my support, trying to help me keep my employment. And she called me at 7:30 Tuesday morning. This was the morning of the commission meeting, and said, "We need to talk about your email you sent last night." I said, "Okay, well, let's talk about it." And she said, "Well, so I've already gotten phone calls from a commissioner and from the sheriff this morning. This is there's a lot going on. She said, so let me get this straight. You want to revert back to your battalion chief position? I said, yes, that's what I want. I want to finish out my career. She said, well, we can make that happen, but you need to stop your campaign. I said, what campaign? I don't have a campaign going. I'm sitting there in shock. And she said, well, you've got a lot of people that are making phone calls and sending emails on your behalf. And, it can be very damaging if conflicting information starts getting out. I said, well, the only conflicting information I'm aware of is you telling people that I've resigned when in fact I still have not resigned at this point. And she said, well, if you want a chance to revert back, you need to make all of this stop. So
you get a bunch of support. You get an outpouring of support. And again, you're being blamed for doing something wrong here. I mean, this is almost comical at this point. If it wasn't such a serious and really tough situation for you, I mean, this would be hilariously disrespectful. I mean, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it gets deeper if you want to go deeper. There's more to this story too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please continue. I mean, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. So, that same morning, this is prior to, because public comment typically happens around 11 o'clock, 11:30, somewhere around there. Well, people are still planning on going. They're, trying to get things together, all going to go. Well, there was a phone call made to Union President Dave Stevens, and it was on speakerphone, so it was overheard by people. It was from Commissioner Sarah Arnold. And she told him that if people start showing up in my support, it'll be to my detriment. It'll force her hand. She'll have to reveal the information she has on me. It'll be very damaging, and I'll never be able to find a job in the state of Florida again. Right. So first off, there is
what?
I welcome any type of inquiry, investigation, look into my history. I've got nothing to hide. There's nothing out there that's damaging to me. So at that point, Dave starts calling multiple people. I mean, and there's tons of people who will vouch to this because, he called multiple people, and was relaying that information to them. And then, Sarah Arnold actually reached out to several people directly, told them the same thing, and also said that, elaborated on it, that all of this had to be kept quiet because there was another commissioner who I'm not going to mention that would try to use this information to prevent Joy from getting her full-time appointment. And
this is all politics.
Yeah.
It's all politics, and the intimidation worked. I mean, people kept calling me. They were really concerned about going to show support or to speak or whichever, because they said they were fearing for me, and I was like, hey, I welcome it. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to fear. So bring on any type of investigation or inquiry.
And again, you're a guy who went 22 years in the department, and as I understand it, not one single disciplinary action, correct?
Correct. I don't have any discipline on my file. And, I've always done, I've had to further my education and, do everything that, possible to make myself a better firefighter. And I've taken tons of leadership classes, and Leadership 101, if somebody is doing whatever kind of behavior it is, and if you don't step in, if you don't intervene and correct them, provide either some direction, some corrective action, the person's not going to know that they're doing anything wrong, and they're going to continue to do it in that fashion. I mean, there's been nothing said to me in the 10 months that I was, or 9 months that I was either interim or appointed fire chief. There's been none of that brought to my attention. So, from as far as I know, I'm doing a good job. Morale was up at the highest point ever that I can remember in the department. We're saving tons of money for the department, or for the county actually. And we're making progress, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And then and real quick, I'll go back to that Tuesday. The phone call I had with Joy that morning, I got a phone. She said, well, she'll reach out to me to set up a meeting. I got called at 3:30 that afternoon, request for a meeting with Joy at 5:00. So 5:00, I show up at county admin, met in a conference room with Joy and HR director Lillian Hutchinson. And when Joy walked in, she said, "We need to talk about your resignation." I said, "Well, I thought we were here to talk about my reversion to battalion chief." And she said, "Well, first you need to resign from your battalion chief. For your fire, first you need to resign from the fire chief position." I said, "Well, resign doesn't make any sense to resign when I'm just going to revert back to a battalion chief. I'm not going to resign my employment."
Right.
And at that point, she told me that they had talked with their attorney and their labor attorney, and the attorney recommended against me reverting back. I said, "Well, why is that?" And the two reasons she gave me were, it's not a common practice, which is not true. It's very common practice in departments all over, Jacksonville being one of them.
And you're still in your probation period. That's a very key component. You're still in your probation period. That component is very, very key to what you're requesting.
Yeah, just because they say it's not common doesn't mean it's illegal, doesn't mean it's breaking any rules. Just because they say it doesn't happen often doesn't mean it doesn't happen or can't happen.
Yep.
Right, and it's outlined in the collective bargaining agreement. And then you also use the reason again about it would make people uncomfortable, saying that because I was part of contract negotiations that people might have hostile feelings towards me. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I was not involved in contract negotiations. I was forbidden to be a part of contract negotiations by county administration. Lillian Hutchinson was the lead negotiator on the county side of the table. Mm-hmm. I was not in the room a single time during negotiations. But at any rate, she said it wasn't going to happen. I'm not reverting back. And then that's when I said, well, what happens if I choose not to resign? She said, well, we'll be forced to terminate you and we'll figure out a reason why.
Didn't even have a real reason at the time.
And
didn't even have a real reason. We will basically said we will
in Florida
make up a reason.
In Florida, you don't have to have a reason why.
That is true. That's
true. That's a true statement. You don't have to have a reason why.
Still, she didn't have a reason at the time of her saying this. There was no actual reason.
Right.
And she said, we'll make up a reason.
Yeah.
We'll come up with a reason.
That is a stupid rule in Florida.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So look, this career was your whole life. Look, maybe the county felt like there were reasons they didn't want you there anymore. 22 years. Maybe you're not the perfect fit for fire chief. Okay, fine. But I don't hear anything that warrants taking away your entire livelihood, especially a handful of years away from retirement. You filed a grievance that said in part you believe your rights have been violated, specifically Article 8, Section 8.5. Which you say entitles you to regain your old position with the fire department.
Correct.
And it sounds like you don't want to leave the department. It sounds like you never really wanted to leave the department.
It's your family.
You're giving up a lot just for those 3 years. And for the rest of his life. So you're giving up a lot for those 3 years. And Scott, I can feel for you exactly, because I loved my job for 20. I was 22 years, and on the 23rd year is when I no longer was with the county. So I can tell you, I loved my job for 22 years. I had a county administrator that I had a conflict with. And it was one of those things. I had already resigned to the fact that, okay, if I don't retire right now, they're going to fire me in 6 months. I know those conversations went through your head.
But you didn't even see this coming.
Let me finish, please.
Okay.
So I know those went through your head on that Monday morning and the conversation you had with your wife. At what point, because I know this happened, at what point were you like, screw this? Why am I getting, because you've worked there and given your entire life for all that time. And it's completely, and we want you to know from our side, we appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing I want to make sure we get to you is your time was appreciated. And that was very important for me to hear from other people, that we appreciate your time, no matter how this falls out for you. So.
Well, thank you for that. To answer your question, I still haven't hit that point. I mean, I still love the fire department. I love the people that, I mean, there's been a constant outpouring of support from members of our department. And that's what's helped get me through all of this, is knowing that, they see through all of this. They know who I am, and, they still support me. And that's, so that's kept me going. And that's what still is pulling me back, to the department. I want to go back and work for the department, work for this community, and give what I have left to give for the next, however long. I mean, 3 years is just a benchmark to get, where I'm eligible to retire. I had no plans on retiring. I love what I do, and I love the people who I do it with.
Scott, what's next? What happens from here? If you get your job back, if you don't get your job back, what are you looking at?
Well, if I get my job back, that's the ideal circumstance for me anyway. I love being a battalion chief. It was, a great position in the department. I'll go that and do that happily throughout the rest of my career, however long that is. If I don't get my job back, I'm going to have to, seek out something with another local department, who's under FRS, obviously, and, basically start over, at close to 50 years old, start over. So.
Jeez, man.
Yeah. Well, go Vols.
Go Vols.
There you go. I'm glad you're getting some time away from all this craziness. So you get to go enjoy your favorite football team, man. That's at least got to be a shining light this week. Get to hang out and go watch some football, man. Get away from all this craziness. We're happy you at least get to do that. Scott, thank you.
I bought these tickets like 6 months ago, and it couldn't have been at a more perfect time. So
I bet
you needed it.
I bet,
and you deserve it.
Scott, thank you, sir, not only for joining us for this morning, but for helping us clear up this situation, helping us try to understand this situation. And again, thank you so much for all of your service here to so many of us here in St. Johns County. And please, if there's anything else you'd ever like to come on and discuss, the door is wide open for you, my friend. And we just thank you so much. And we really hope this works out in the best possible scenario for you. We really do.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you for allowing me to, elaborate on the series of events, because clearly they've been restricting what's been going out. And I just, I think the people of the fire department and of the community need to be aware of what's going on. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, sir. We fully agree with that. Scott Bullard, have a great time out there in Tennessee, and we're hoping for the best for you. We appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.
Yep. You too. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Wow, man.
So, I mean, and that was the whole thing. It was political. It wasn't performance.
Yeah. And you should not lose your job over politics.
Well, unfortunately, when you're in that type of job, it happens.
Yep.
And it's part of the risk of being the boss. And
doesn't mean it should happen.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't make it right. But that's part of he made a very early statement early on. His appointment came under Hunter.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that already is going to put a little bit of a mark on you, because there was reasons that happened why Hunter lost his job, and it's being too close to the head of the snake. So it's something, it's.
Is that something that you strategically plan for in your career then professionally?
No, right. You can't.
When you take that job, you hopefully understand that that's part of the risk. Like there's people that were at directors here, and then they took a job as an assistant county administrator. Now, when Hunter gets gone, a lot of times what happens when that happens, they get rid of all the assistant county administrators. Last time, that's what happened. They got rid of pretty much all of them, that were underneath Mike Wanchak.
Yeah.
So it's being too close to the head of the snake. Sometimes, I'm not calling Hunter a snake. It's a figure of speech. It's figure of speech.
I know what you mean.
But that's the part that really is a danger, and it works in corporate the same way. if they get rid of the CEO, sometimes the CFO's the closest person to him. That person goes too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and it's unfortunate. It sounds like there's some political push within the organization because that reorganization, the timeline that I heard from Scott, they already had communication with the people below him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't know. So, I mean, that's the one that kind of really catches me is like, I knew when it was happening to me and what was happening. In my disagreements, my stubborn ass is part of the reason why I got let go, but I knew I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Scott felt like he was doing the right thing. The only part that bothered me is like his people didn't give him a heads up.
Right. Right.
That
he was in the dark.
That was one that I didn't realize.
He got shanked.
So
yeah, this is just absolutely no way to treat somebody who put their life on the line for 22 years to serve St. Johns County.
Especially being
did it loyally.
He requested to go back to a battalion chief.
Yes,
I mean,
and he's fully within his right to do that. Fully within the law to do that.
And we don't. I mean, we just did an interview live, and it's there. I guarantee you, there's more stuff to it, but it's sometimes when it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. I mean, there's definitely some flaws in this.
It's still not completely clear to me. Maybe we'll get more information that comes out, but boy, it just doesn't sound like a fair shake that Scott has gotten.
Yeah,
it just doesn't sound like it to me. And I hope St. Johns County does the right thing and at least gives him his battalion chief to where he had no discipline. He was never in trouble. Never had anything against him. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But we do appreciate Scott's time here this morning, helping us fill in some blanks in this very, very important story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got out of what I really wanted to hear. It wasn't performance based; it was politics, and the union has power in a lot of ways. Yeah, and I think there's some other things where there was conflicts, and he wasn't a part of the negotiations, but his opinions were expressed through the county negotiations. So just to be clear, he was saying it was the HR that was doing that. I guarantee you, I was at the county when they did some of these other negotiations. The chief had a say in those, and
possibly,
and that's. I think there was some more to that rub than what we're hearing in this. And I think that, like I said, I think it was politics over performance.
Well, I'd hope the right thing is done at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. That's all I can say. But we will move on, and we appreciate the insights from the former fire chief. Mm-hmm.